If you've been following the news about AI, you've probably felt it. That little pit in your stomach, that feeling that every new headline is just another warning about the future of our jobs. But is that feeling the whole story? We decided to look at the data to find out. It's really easy to think so, right? There's this genuine anxiety that builds up when you're constantly reading articles that frame AI as this massive threat to how we make a living. It's a powerful and, let's be honest, kind of scary story. What if that feeling, that perception, doesn't actually match the reality of what's being published? So, to get to the bottom of this, we dove into a massive data set of over 6,000 recently published articles from across the US, all focused specifically on AI in the workforce. We wanted to find the real story hiding behind all those headlines. And what the data shows? Well, it challenges that whole doom and gloom narrative right from the get go. Because when you stop looking at the individual scary headlines and zoom out to see the big picture, the story isn't at all what you'd expect. And here it is. Honestly, it's pretty staggering. This pie chart breaks down the sentiment of all those articles, and look at this. Over two-thirds, a whopping 67.6%, are actually positive. Only a tiny fraction, just 14.3%, are negative. So the vast majority of media coverage out there is optimistic about AI's role in our work. And that right there leads us to the absolute core question of this entire explainer. The numbers clearly show a positive story. Why do so many of us feel like the conversation is just dominated by fear and negativity? It's a fascinating and really important disconnect. The answer, as it turns out, isn't about the number of stories being published. It's all about their impact, and maybe even more importantly, their simplicity. Okay, here's the first part of the puzzle. What we're looking at is the average PR hit score, which is just a fancy way of measuring an article's total impact, its engagement, its reach, even its source's reputation. Look at that red bar for negative articles. It's significantly higher than its positive counterpart. So even though there are way fewer negative stories, they punch way, way above their weight. They get more attention and they spread a whole lot further. But it's not just about getting more clicks. The very way these stories are built plays a massive role in why the negative ones seem to stick in our minds. Now, this chart tells us about how many different topics or aspects are covered in each article. See how that red box for negative stories is lower and tighter? This tells us something huge. Negative articles are way simpler. They usually focus on one sharp, easy to digest warning. They make themselves incredibly easy to understand, to remember, and of course, to share. The positive stories, on the other hand, are just more complex with more layers to them. So we know negative stories are simpler and they spread like wildfire. But what's that one simple topic they keep hammering on about? Well, as it turns out, the data makes this incredibly obvious. As we dug into specific things being discussed, it became crystal clear that the whole media conversation is being pulled in one very specific direction by one single dominant theme. And here it is. This chart shows the top 10 most mentioned topics. And just look at how employment is an absolute skyscraper, towering over everything else. I mean, it makes sense, right? When you talk about AI and work, the first question is always, what about my job? But seeing it dominate like this shows how this one simple, super polarizing topic is setting the entire tone for the whole narrative. So when you put all of these pieces together, a really clear picture of the media landscape starts to form. And it's a landscape that presents a very simple, specific challenge, but also a very big opportunity. So here's the bottom line. The media's negativity bias is a very real thing. Simple, fear-based stories are basically clickbait because, well, they grab our attention way more effectively than a nuanced positive story does. That feeling of doom and gloom you get, it's not just in your head, it's by design. Because the stories that get the most attention are the most negative ones. But this isn't just some unfortunate fact about modern media, it's a clear signal. It shows us exactly where the work needs to be done. So the real story of AI in the workforce isn't one of just doom and gloom. It's one of complexity. The positive, nuanced stories are absolutely out there, but they take more effort to tell and to find. The opportunity, then, is to cut through all that noise. This is where Captivate steps in, taking those complex, positive stories and telling them with clarity and impact. So, now that you can see the difference between perception and reality, the question is, which stories will you choose to amplify?